Speaking of which, UK companies are now looking to foreign workers because managers have found it difficult to attract British staff. The economist Max Mosley told the Telegraph newspaper that international workers are now propping up the labour market. More than 9 million people of working age have quit the jobs market, and the number of companies registering to become sponsors to hire staff overseas has doubled in the last 2 years. Meanwhile, the Office for National Statistics report that 2.8 million people blame long-term sickness as the reason they're neither in work nor looking for a job. And the Times newspaper report that the Home Office is facing unprecedented demand for work visas before the rise in the minimum salary threshold in April. 169,000 work visas were issued last year. Now, obviously, it's great to bring in the best foreign talent, but is Britain once again becoming the lazy man of Europe? Let's speak to top entrepreneur and former Apprentice star Ryan-Mark Parsons. Ryan, good to see you again. Yeah. As a very successful businessman, are you aware of this issue in your own industry?
Well, yes, I'm just finding there's a growing sense of apathy in this country where people are just so willing to not work. And I think a lot of that is because of so many factors. For example, I'm a young person, I'm 23. Just talking to my friends, a lot of them are now living at home. The average house price in London is £730,000. They're looking at figures like that. They're looking at inflation, which is spiraling. Jeremy Hunt hasn't unfrozen the tax thresholds, which usually changes in line with inflation. There's so many financial issues that people in this country are now facing. It just encourages this apathy. And now we're looking at 5 million people in this country as well that are claiming out of work benefits. That needs to be slashed to incentivize people to actually get off their backside and go to work. That's what I would say. So I'm not surprised that employers are looking outside of the UK, because quite frankly, a lot of people in this country as well are too snobby to do the jobs that migrants are willing to do when they come here.
And Ryan-Mark, if people have genuine medical issues, my heart goes out to them. I'm sure you'll take the same view. But is it really possible that 2.8 million people are so ill they can't work?
Yeah, I'm very doubtful of that figure in terms of actual genuine medical issues, in terms of it being nearly 3 million. And also considering since the pandemic, the number of economically inactive people in this country is about 884,000, which is just ridiculous. And I think also the pandemic might actually be a cause for people getting so used to working from home. They get so used to these personal settings that they get to experience day to day because their employer is so relaxed about them not going to the office. I think this has inspired a mentality where people are just so comfortable with their surroundings that they don't even feel the need to go to work or go to the office, and they're just going to claim benefits because that is at an all-time high. I think so much needs to be done by the government to incentivize people to get out of bed, go to work, and it doesn't matter what it is. Why are 5 million people in this country claiming out of work benefits? 9 million people that could be working as well, that aren't. It's a joke.
Most definitely. Well, full disclosure, I don't want to be accused of double standards. As I was preparing today's show, I was working from home, and let me tell you that my team missed me terribly. Maria, Mescana, Katie, they weren't right without me. But let's bring in my top pundits. Broadcasting legend David Hamilton, former government advisor Claire Pearsall, and TV personality Precious Muir. David, do you think that Britain is once again the lazy man of Europe?
Well, I think a lot of people have probably worked out that they're better off on benefits than they are working, and they don't particularly want to work. I think the other thing is as well that sometimes people from overseas are prepared to work for less money. So I think it's a kind of catch-22 situation.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, Claire, how do we fix this problem? Because if that many indigenous Brits aren't working, at some point the economy is going to fall over.
Well, I think the government needs to look very hard at tax bans, because they've been frozen since 2022. Normally they go up with inflation. So it just means that at the moment you've got this horrible thing called fiscal drag, which has included so many more people into general taxation as a whole, but also those into higher rates of income tax than they've ever had to pay previously. And if you are on a relatively limited budget, with everything going on with the cost of living crisis and the soaring rates of childcare, for example, then I think the government needs to really look quite hard as to what it's doing to re-look at the tax bands, perhaps move them in line with inflation once more, and make childcare much more affordable for those working families.
Although the flip side is that with a mental health tsunami and 8 million people on an NHS waiting list, Precious Muir, perhaps we need to understand that Brits just aren't as well as they were and they need support and they can't work.
Well, I think a lot of people haven't bounced back since the pandemic. I think that they haven't adjusted and realised that they need to get back out there and do the things that they need to do to get work, to be able to participate to society, to actually just like contribute. I think that they've become very complacent. They've become very like, OK, this is just going to how it's going to be. And they're not willing to do those kind of jobs for the pay that they're offering at the moment. And Europeans who are coming in will. I mean, most of the people in the service industry are from Europe. I don't see really that many British people working in, you know, restaurants, bars,
Costa,
hotels.
I've never had
they really don't, and they're not willing to take on those jobs, so they have to offer them to someone. Somebody has to do it. So
somebody's got to do it. Ryan-Mark Parsons, you get the last word.
Well, I really have to echo what Precious was saying. I agree. I think there's a growing complacency. And I think it's embedded in British culture where a lot of people just don't feel like they want to do the jobs that migrants are willing to do and at a lower cost. I've got friends that are Indigenous Brits. And when I suggested to one of them who's been unemployed for months, I said, why don't you get a job in a restaurant? Why don't you go to a cafe? Why don't you do this? No, it's beneath me. It's beneath me. And I think this snobbery, this apathy, this complacency, that's what needs to change. And I think until that does, we're going to see these rates soar and unemployment is going to keep growing.
Ryan-Mark Parsons, you're a star. Please come back and see us soon. Top entrepreneur and former star of the BBC One TV show, The Apprentice.